Hello and welcome to our live and exclusive coverage of the Canadian Grand Prix. And there is Mr. Montoya. He is the man of the moment at the moment for Williams, let me tell you. Alan Jones, early in the morning, but live, that's good.
Yes, good morning, Des. Good morning, everyone.
Williams on pole.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? And the Michelin's really showing now that they're perhaps not as heat dependent as we thought, because it's not unduly hot over there at the moment, but we still have two Michelin-shod cars on the first two rows. Good
news for the tyre company. Now, there have been a number of little subtle changes to this circuit.
Yeah, they've shortened the hairpin, well, they've brought it back a little bit. I can only assume to make the runoff area a lot longer. And they've altered the pit exit, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But because they've shortened it in some places, the race is now going to be 1 lap longer, 70 laps instead of 69.
It's a place you used to like to race.
Oh, I always enjoyed going there. It was great because the circuit was next to the, well, very close to the hotels, and they in turn were very close to the airport, so I could get home earlier.
All right, qualifying, Montoya on pole. Let's have a look at how they got there. Here's Tim Gilbert.
Canada, and it was a battle between the master and the pupil, Michael Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya. And it was the young Colombian who won the day, grabbing pole position. Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari spun his way into third spot on the grid. Ralph Schumacher in his Williams will start in fourth position. Sato in his Jordan got a little hot under the collar, but escaped without injury. Kimi Raikkonen will start in fifth spot in his McLaren. David Coulthard in the other McLaren had a tougher day. He was 8th fastest. Giancarlo Fisichella in his Jordan will start in 6th spot. Nick Heidfeld has put his Sauber into 7th. Meanwhile, at his home Grand Prix, Jacques Villeneuve will start from 9th. But the man they'll all have to catch, Juan Pablo Montoya.
I gave it a good go, and that was quite good, but if you really put the sectors together, could have gone a bit quicker as well. So it's a big, quite interesting race tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Let's see some fireworks there as Montoya lines up on the front row next to Michael Schumacher. Behind them, Schumacher's teammate and Montoya's teammate. Next is Kiki Raikkonen, great thing for him, in 5th position for McLaren. Fisichella in 6th. Heinfeld, Coulthard, Villeneuve, Trulli, Panis, Massa, Button, Irvine, Sato, De La Rosa, Benoldi, Salo, Frenson, McNish, Mark Webber and Alex Young bringing up the rear just half a second inside the 107% qualification rule.
We've talked about the tyres right throughout the season. Now Bridgestone really look like they're coming on their own.
Well, I think what's happened is that Michelin have only had one season behind them. They're using the data that they got last year. That's putting them into good effect. And I think, as I said before, they're becoming just a little bit weather dependent less. So once upon a time, if it was a cool track, you could almost forget the Michelins. I think they've addressed that, and they're showing it.
All right, we'll take a break. Back shortly. Stay with us. Live coverage. Back. Let's have a look at the points of interest that are around Formula One at the moment. Now, this is pretty complicated. We have covered it before. While there are no Aussies in action outside Formula One this weekend, there is one very much in Formula One news at the moment. You may remember the last time that we spoke about the tussle over the TV money for Minardi. As Minardi finished 10th in 99 and 2000, Paul Stoddard believes the money belongs to his team and has circulated a document to all team owners asking their agreement. However, Stoddard has now said that Tom Walkinshaw has sent his own letter to every team except Minardi, asking the other team bosses to instead distribute the money among the top 9 teams from 2001. AJ, this thing is really getting messy.
Well, it almost seems like Tom Walkinshaw has got the axe out for Stoddart and Minardi. I mean, every time they want to do something, it's invariably Walkinshaw that's putting up the red flag. I can see both sides of the argument, but for goodness sake, like, Minardi need the help, they need the money. We want to see more cars in Formula One, not less. Let's give them a bit of a help and get on with it.
Well, they were talking about there was some talk that they're going to sue each other, but apparently that can't happen.
The so-called Concord Agreement prohibits them from suing each other, but it can go to arbitration, and I'm just wondering who the arbitrator would be.
I think I've got a fair idea. All right, in the meantime, still on Stoddard, he's signed an obscure Slovak called Jirko Malkarek, and as his new test driver. Now, the 35-year-old is a member of Parliament. Have a listen to this, a sports commentator. The suggestion from the paddock is that Malkarek has bought the test drive as an exercise in self-promotion. So both sides win as he gets the publicity and Minardi gets the cash. Funny being Formula One. I mean...
he's probably got an ego he can't jump over.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, 35-year-old test driver, I mean, where's he going? Where's his future? I mean, I just find that totally ridiculous.
Well, I suppose Stoddart just looking to whatever cash he can get, because the word is, if he doesn't get cash very shortly, he won't go past the British Grand Prix.
No, well, as I said last time we were on air, he is going out the back door to the tune of about $1 million a week, I believe, which is not good, that is for sure.
And the rumour is that Webber has had a talk with both Toyota and Renault. Well, he is contracted to Renault.
Well, Mark's done exactly what he should have done, and that's to do with the very best he can in the machinery that he's got. And he has done that extremely well. And other people have looked at that and thought, well, hang on, if he's doing that in that thing, maybe he can do a real good job in our car.
OK. Now, there's been a change to the pit exit. We mentioned that off the top of the show for today's race. I think it was Schumacher nearly hitting Frentzen some years ago now.
It's always been a really dicey exit leaving the pits here. So what they've done is when you leave the pits, you run parallel with the circuit for a while before you come in. So instead of coming back onto the circuit at turn 1, I think you join it closer to turn 2. What this will mean now, I think, is it'll make for a lot quicker pit stops, which could alter the strategy. Instead of being a one-stop race, it could very well be 2 stops, because the teams calculate hundreds of seconds, obviously, in their stops. And if they think by making the car quicker with a lighter fuel load, being able to get in and out of the pits quicker, they could very well go for a 2-stop strategy.
OK, well, there it is. Live pictures coming in now. We'll now take you to James Allen, Martin Brundle for our coverage.
Would have been on the last row of the grid this year. He would have just crept into the race with last year's pole, partly because the track is 69 metres shorter with the repositioning of the hairpin, partly because it's 2 metres wider into turn 1, and as Rubens pointed out on the grid, that means they're a gear up, taking a lot more speed through turn 1. But also we have seen lap times smashed by over 2 seconds per lap, haven't we, in qualifying anyway through this season, as the tyre war hots up and really Williams and McLaren moving up to really challenge that utterly dominant early season Ferrari. But track temperatures then over 30 degrees, that's the hottest we've seen it. And do you remember in qualifying yesterday when the sun came out, all of a sudden the weight of the Michelin runners moved forward, didn't it? And then towards the end when the track cooled again, Bridgestone seemed strong, and of course Bridgestone was strong in the warm-up, but it was a lot cooler.
Yes, it's going to be a race that changes throughout the course of around about the next hour and a half, which is the expected duration, unless we have a safety car, of course, or any kind of rain intervention. The track will change, the circumstances will change. It's a race that's going to unfold in front of us, and the first thing to do is get into the first corner. Now, we saw in Monaco 2 weeks ago Juan Pablo Montoya having problems with the Williams launch control system. Speaking to the engineers from Williams in the last couple of days, they say that they believe they've fixed it. They believe they can get him away cleanly today, but it's really in the hands of the computer.
I watched them all practice this morning, and the one really struggling was Fisichella, who's 6th on the grid. His systems seemed to keep dropping out. He wasn't activating it properly. For whatever reason, Fisichella not getting cleanly away at the end of the pits this morning. Everybody else seemed fine. I have to say the McLarens and the Renaults seemed super strong on that launch control.
Everybody taking their positions. Everyone is in position. You know the drill. When the 5 lights go off, we'll be racing in Canada. Are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. Go! Fantastic sweep across the front by Montoya. Barrichello away well, and it's 1-2-3. Barrichello goes inside Michael Schumacher. That looked planned to me, I have to say. The rumour before the race was that he might go off on a 2-stopper, and we've already got race strategy playing into our hands. Montoya leads in Montreal, but Barrichello is in 2nd place.
I do tend to agree with you, James, that Michael eased him through quite comfortably, and the Barrichello looked ready to take that instantly. Seems to me the 2 McLarens got away well also, so really a tactical start, and as Barrichello pointed out on the grid, that 2 metre wider, the width of a car effectively, just eased the whole first section far more than we've seen in the past.
So watch out now then for Rubens Barrichello attacking Juan Pablo Montoya in this opening sequence. We believe they're running different strategies. It's going to be a fascinating battle as Montoya streaks down away at the back. Barrichello second, Michael Schumacher third. Fourth is Raikkonen, fantastic start for him. He's displaced Ralf Schumacher down to fifth. Sixth is Coulthard up from eighth, a fantastic start for the Scot. Seventh is Heidfeld. Fisichella has dropped from sixth down to eighth. Trulli is ninth, and Villeneuve in 10th place.
Yes, so as we said, Fisichella appeared to be struggling with his launch control. And now you've got to assume Michael Schumacher on the harder option of Bridgestone. And look how light that car is of Rubens Barrichello. It's just breezed past Montoya. And now his job this afternoon, James, is to slow Montoya down. We've got a Jaguar gone in the pit lane in front of us. De La Rosa already in the pit lane. And Rubens now, will they use him tactically to hold Montoya up for Michael? Or will he just disappear into the distance and be allowed to run his own race?
Well, the Jaguar actually hit the wall. If you look at the right-hand side as you look at it, the left-hand side as he looks at it, he hit the wall in the final corner, and De La Rosa went straight on into the pit lane. But now, at the front, we've got Rubens Barrichello, and he's running away from Juan Montoya. And I think possibly the strategy there from Ferrari is to see if they could force Montoya into making some kind of mistake. Because he didn't bite back, he didn't bite on the cherry, he let Barrichello go through, he could see he was faster. And now we have a very interesting scrap on our hands. Michael Schumacher also pushing very hard.
Yes, Schumacher got very close to Montoya into turn 8. He's fallen back a bit for some reason. But for whatever it is, they're getting instant performance from those Bridgestones, and the Michelin runners are taking time to get up to speed. You have to say, look at Barrichello then, currently third. Michael just eases him through, and that was, no doubt about it, a tactical move. And later on in this lap, and as the cars cleanly go through, Rubens Barrichello just drove off that final corner, blasted past Montoya. Montoya will know the story. He will not panic about that.
No, he won't panic, but it's an interesting development and a pretty risky thing to do as well, wouldn't you say? I mean, you can't really choreograph things when you've got 22 testosterone-driven young men all charging into the first corner at about 120 miles an hour. Difficult to sort of choreograph things.
It's easier now with launch control. And look, here then is Montoya. Looks, he came off the last corner absolutely fine, probably a bit tardy. But Barrichello, looking like he's on a qualifying lap, breezed around the long way round, really, but took track position for the first left-hander. And now it's sort of settling down a little bit. Barrichello just 0.8 of a second ahead as they crossed the finish line last time around. Montoya stabilised.
Well, Pedro de la Rosa has rejoined the race. We're on board, though, with Juan Montoya in second place. Ahead of us is Rubens Barrichello as we go into this new hairpin section. Tight into the corner, hit the gas. They're going to hit 205 miles an hour at the end of this long straightaway.
And I have to say, Ferrari's had tremendous straight line speed. Normally we're used to seeing this BMW Williams with the top speeds all around the circuit, but Ferrari have matched them and beaten them all weekend, and we saw it again in the warm-up, although it did appear that Montoya had taken some wing off in an attempt to be as fast as the Ferraris, and here they're dropping Michael Schumacher now. Michael Schumacher's fallen 1.7 seconds behind Montoya. So Barrichello from Montoya, Michael Schumacher, Raikkonen, Ralf Schumacher, Coulthard, Heidfeld, Fisichella, Trulli, and Button then up in the top 10.
Well, last year, most of the front runners stopped only once. We saw Ralf Schumacher coming in on lap 51. We saw Michael Schumacher come in on lap 46. And a couple of two-stoppers. There was the Jaguars and the Arrows last year. Now, we expect to see them to do the same thing. Clearly, Rubens Barrichello is on some kind of similar strategy, running lighter. But the crucial factor here, if Michael Schumacher and Juan Montoya are both running a one-stop fuel load, the Ferrari fuel tank is smaller than the Williams. Not a lot in it, but usually about 3 or 4 laps of fuel less will go into the Ferrari than will go into the Williams. It could be significant later in the race.
Yes, and I think you can also assume, given recent form, that the 4th and 6th place McLarens of Raikkonen and Coulthard will also be very fat on fuel. They'll go a long way into this race before they stop. But, right at the moment, Barrichello probably not getting away from Montoya in the way that it looked as if he could, by the fact he passed him so easily.
Well, you remember, it was Brazil, I believe, where we thought Montoya was on a two-stop, the way he breezed past Michael Schumacher, and it turned out he was, in fact, actually on a one. He seems able to respond and get enormous speed out of the car to extract it. At the moment, his lap times no more than 2 or 3/10 of a second slower, and a great battle there between the Jordan and the BAR.
That's Sato then and Panis. They're fighting as if it's the last lap of a Grand Prix, back there in 13th and 14th, both, of course, with the Honda engine, and it has to be said, both Honda teams, Jordan and BAR, going much better this weekend. That's good news.
Jenson Button also improving, currently in 10th place, so it's been a good start for the two Renault cars. Trulli 9th and Button in 10th. Villeneuve is in 11th place. He's dropped down a couple of spots. And we've seen the Toyota, as Martin's saying, up in 12th, so they're attacking from the start. Clearly, a real mishmash of strategies in the midfield. We must keep an eye on that midfield battle because, like I was saying earlier on, last year we only had 9 finishers here, and really, it can come from anywhere in the field. If you're in the midfield, you've got a good chance of points in the Canadian Grand Prix.
Absolutely, it's a super hot pace, James. They're immediately down into the 1:17s, the first two runners, and that's approaching the lap record of the circuit already. Yes, it is best part of 70 metres shorter, but nonetheless so early in the race with such a heavy fuel load. This is a very hot pace.
Well, the computer models that the teams have tell them that 2 stops is about 20 seconds faster than 1 stop around here, but the big risk is a safety car. If you get a safety car situation, you are in big trouble on a 2-stop strategy, as one of the Jaguars cuts through and takes the path of least resistance. De La Rosa having an eventful afternoon, hit the wall at the start, back out there having prepared the puncture and still in 22nd place.
Yes, I'm hearing from our pit crew that apparently De La Rosa had contact with McNish and then went into the wall, so that's why he pitted at the end of the first lap, and he's fighting with himself right to the back and still managing to go off. So as you said, miserable start for him. Panis and Sato then fighting with Massa just behind them. That's 13th, 14th and 15th, but this is the front three. Barrichello 1.4 ahead of Montoya, who's 2.3 ahead then of Michael Schumacher, but they're lapping in similar lap times until you get down to Raikkonen, who's a full 1 and a bit seconds away. So these three beginning to pull away at the front end. Is that a pass? Is that Salo? Surely the man that made the best start of anybody in this Grand Prix. Passing Villeneuve for 11th place. Yes, it is.
Yes, Salo's done very well off the start. Qualified down in 18th place. Now up to 12th and attacking hard in the Toyota.
You've got to assume then that Toyota's on a 2-stop, lighter fuel load. He's managed to come out of turn 9, get up alongside Villeneuve. Villeneuve didn't put up too much of a fight. Good friends, those two, Salo and Villeneuve, and they share spaces all around the European Grand Prix with their campers next door to each other. In the Coulthard's in that little camp as well, and they're all quite good mates.
They are indeed. They also have a competition between them to who can have the most outrageous pickup truck. And Salo has one over in Finland, which has 1,000 horsepower. Villeneuve has yet to match it.
And we think Sato has also taken Panis for that 13th place. Yes, indeed he has. We were watching that fight earlier on. So plenty of action then in the second half of the field, James, but at the front it's very much status quo. Barrichello's lead, 1.5 seconds now. Michael Schumacher continues to fall off the back of those leading two by some 3/4 of a second per lap.
Well, Montoya just cut right across the chicane, made a bit of a mistake there and cut across the chicane, across the start-finish line. You're looking now at the battle between Kimi Raikkonen and Ralf Schumacher. Raikkonen 4th, running very strongly on a track where he finished well here last year, and Ralf Schumacher in 5th place. And, well, Raikkonen can finish where he is now. He'll match what he achieved last year in 4th place.
I think, and as I'm watching out of the window, half the field are cutting across the escape road down here at the last chicane. I think Barrichello's just been given the release. I think he's been told to go, because Michael's falling back. Barrichello's just popped a lap in, a full second faster than anybody else in the field, and that's his teammate Michael Schumacher, and a second and a half faster than the non-Ferrari competitors at least. And suddenly I think Barrichello's been released into, right, go and maximise your advantage now. I don't think he can come into play and help Michael too much.
No, I think obviously the pace of Montoya in 2nd place is greater than Ferrari were perhaps imagining as we look at a replay of Villeneuve and Sato.
So that's Sato taking 12. That's 2 cars he's passed in the last 2 laps then. Both of them BAR. So also Sato then you would assume is on a 2-stop lighter fuel. And does Villeneuve get back at him? In fact, Sato looks like he blended out of the throttle. He probably felt he'd overtaken through the chicane, which in fact he didn't. but he probably felt he'd gained an advantage, and to avoid being penalised with a drive-through, he got off the throttle and let Villeneuve back through again.
Well, he may have had a note from the team to do so over the radio, or it may have been his own initiative. If it was his own initiative, it was extraordinarily generous. Lap 9 then, Barrichello leading Montoya by 3.3 seconds. Michael Schumacher dropping back a little bit now. He's 5.6 seconds behind his teammate. Raikkonen fourth, 12.5 seconds behind Barrichello. Then Ralf Schumacher, Coulthard, Heidfeld in 7th place. 8 is Fisichella, 9th is Trulli, and 10th still the Renault of Jenson Button.
Welcome back to the Canadian Grand Prix, and AJ, Jacques Villeneuve, his home Grand Prix, qualified 9th, out.
Yeah, it's an understatement to say it's a shame. It's a shame to drop out of any Grand Prix, but to drop out of your home Grand Prix must have been a real stinger for him, because they have improved that VAR. It's a different specification. He qualified 9th and he did raise the hopes of the locals, but unfortunately, Ralph getting a bit untidy there. As indeed Jaguar, they've just moved into their new wind tunnel down the road. They're starting to utilise that of about a week ago. They've got a new aero kit, and look out for really bigger things for the British Grand Prix for them.
Back to the boys.
The thing is that every other Michelin runner is on the softer tyre, so you would imagine as they get further and further into this stint, Raikkonen will come under increasing pressure, and that then I think is a replay of Villeneuve getting out of the throttle and parking the car before he goes into that sort of tunnel effect of that final straight where the cars are doing over 200 miles an hour. But Montoya has managed to stabilise again now, that gap at the front, James. 3.5 seconds. Barrichello put a spurt on. There he is. And Montoya seemed to just have to react to it, because pulled out that lead. If Barrichello can keep pulling those out through the afternoon, we may see his first Grand Prix win of the season. But you would have to assume that Rubens will pit earlier than any of the other front runners.
Well, the ease with which he breezed past Montoya at the beginning of the race would certainly suggest that he's carrying less fuel, but the way Montoya has pegged him for pace, the two are more or less matching each other on lap times, no more than a couple of tenths between them lap after lap. Rubens Barrichello just gone fastest lap of the race so far on lap 13, a 1:17.1, but Montoya just a couple of tenths slower.
Safety car is standing by. We've got car 3 has gone off the track according to the computer. But there is a safety car standing by, and
David Coulthard.
I don't understand. We haven't seen any reason. We think Coulthard has possibly stopped, and maybe they want to recover that car of Villeneuve. That's where the yellow flags are waving still, where they're trying to get that stricken BAR Honda Villeneuve off the side of the road. Then there's not much space, but he appeared to park it very sensibly, didn't he?
I think what they were saying on the message board is that car 3 went off the track and continued. That's David Coulthard, so he's clearly had some sort of straight lining a corner, or he's had a bit of a spin. It's not related to the safety car issue. So Coulthard's still running strongly in 6th place, but the safety car is standing by in case the marshals want to move the car of Jacques Villeneuve, which is right on the exit of a very fast part of the circuit after the hairpin bend. We'll see it in a moment.
That'll destroy a few strategies this afternoon, James, if they all get moved up back into line again. And if you were running late, you've lost all your advantage, of course. And this was a replay earlier on. Raikkonen got a bit late into turn 1, and Ralph it does happen, you kind of get sucked into somebody else's incident when you're travelling so closely. But Ralph really does appear to have the legs, doesn't he, of the McLaren. Finding a way past is another thing, but I think his harder tyres will pay big dividends as we go further into this Grand Prix.
Sure they will. Ralf Schumacher saying yesterday, very interestingly in his press briefing after qualifying, that he and Montoya are becoming closer and closer to each other, and Montoya backed it up in his briefing a bit later on in the afternoon. They're working very well together, they're very close together, and the safety car has been deployed. Now, as Martin was saying, that's going to mess up a few strategies, and the ones it'll most mess up are the two stoppers.
Yes, it will. They wanted to sprint away, use their light fuel load, and of course any advantage they've eked out earlier on in the Grand Prix, they're going to have to give away behind the safety car. They appear, and Williams are Montoya pits, so Williams choosing to use this as an opportunity. Montoya knows the American system. Pit at the earliest opportunity if you're in a fuel window. So Montoya straight into the pits then for, it'll be an unscheduled stop, but a tactical stop rather than a problem. So there you're watching Montoya. He would have surprised his mechanics, I've no doubt about that, and tanked it right up, I would imagine, James. Will he be able to go to the end of the Grand Prix? We're on lap 15 of the Grand Prix at this time, so I wonder if that would make the difference. But if not, he's got to carry a humongous amount of fuel with him, hasn't he?
Well, clearly they feel that he can do that as he makes his exit out onto the track. He took on a lot more fuel than the stopwatch suggested, as one of the Jordans also comes into the pits to make a tactical pit stop under this safety car period. Well, we were talking at the start of how we'd had 5 safety cars in the last 6 years. Make that 6 out of 7.
So effectively it's a free stop, isn't it, in some ways, because you catch the back of the pack up again. We see the Jordan rejoining of Sato, so you don't lose any time getting down the pit lane, stopping with your crew. But what you do lose is track position, and what Montoya's done pays big dividends if you're the first to pit, because if everybody pits as well, you end up back at the front of the snake again. Louise is in the pits with Jacques Villeneuve.
Jacques, first man out of the race, obviously some kind of technical problem, was it?
Yeah, just had to stop, probably an engine failure, but you never know, it could be something else.
Big disappointment, because it's been a pretty positive weekend up to now for the team.
It was yesterday in qualifying, but in warm-up we weren't competitive, and we saw it in the race, we weren't competitive in the race.
Thanks, Jacques.
Well, Jacques has been pretty damn beat all weekend, hasn't he? Saying, yeah, the new car's not bad, it'll just get me from 14th to 12th on the grid. In fact, he did better than that, but he wasn't very complimentary about the new engine he tested last week at Silverstone either. So, and that was a very down beat local hero, wasn't it? But Montoya's strategy, James, I can't quite see the logic in it at the moment.
No, it's an interesting one, because we've only done 15 laps of this race. He's obviously he knows that it's not going to be a long safety car period. It's not going to take too long to clear an undamaged car off the racetrack. It's not like we've had a substantial incident here as one of the Arrows team dives into the pits. That's Enrique Benoldi from 14th place. I can't see that he's burned off enough fuel yet to be able to put enough fuel in here to take him to the finish. No,
I agree with you. I think the 2 stoppers may as well. Surely they're into a window of opportunity to make a pit stop. But of course that releases Michael Schumacher nicely. So you've got a 1-2 for Ferrari at the moment. Raikkonen up to 3rd, Ralf Schumacher 4th. Then Montoya's slotted back in somehow in 5th. Ted's in the pits.
Martin, it kind of makes sense to me. I think I might have a theory for you as to explaining Montoya's strategy. Rubens wasn't getting away from Montoya as fast as he should have, really. If Montoya would have known that Rubens would have to go 2-stop, because Rubens, of course, is on the soft Bridgestone tyres, there is a chance that Montoya was also running light too. Now he's put a fair bit of fuel in, but he didn't change the tyres because he is on the hard Michelins. Now, will he need to stop again? That's the big question. I think he might make it through until lap 55, maybe lap 60, and then a splash and dash at the end. What about that?
It's possible that Montoya was on a 2-stopper, in which case he should have been travelling faster than he was. But he'll certainly be completely out of sequence now, won't he?
He will. I wonder if Ted saw them do anything else to the car. Perhaps he picked up a sort of sweet wrapper or a plastic bag in his airbox that was in his radiators. We've seen that before here in Montreal, with the crowd so close to the track. Sometimes sweet wrappers, crisp packets, get down onto the track into the radiators and cause the temperatures to go through the roof. Sometimes it's an opportunity to take that out, but certainly in terms of the fuel loads he's been using, it's difficult to see how he can make this work without stopping again.
Yes, and he certainly, I mean, he was in the pits a long time. We only cut to him after he'd come to a halt, and it appeared as if he'd surprised his mechanics, but it was quite a long stop. The good news for Montoya is that despite all of that, he's still only back to 5th position. So that actually worked out quite nicely in terms of track position.
Yes, one of the things that the strategists from the leading teams have noticed in the 2002 season is that after a short period of time, 15, 16 laps of a Grand Prix these days, there is quite a substantial gap between them and the midfielders, the Fisichellas, the Panises and Villeneuves of this world, as Benoldi makes a 2nd consecutive stop, shaking his head. So whatever is wrong with that Arrows car, he's not at all pleased. It's something to do with the right rear corner, and they're having a good look at the suspension before putting the wheel on. Perhaps he didn't feel the wheel had been attached properly.
No, maybe the gunman on that side was not happy, and so they pulled him back in. Quite clearly there is a problem. There's some pegs there that the wheel has to go on. Often when wheels are brand new, they just won't fit on those pegs. But it does appear to be a major gremlin there. They should probably try another wheel, I would have thought, because if they don't go on cleanly, often it's quite a fettling job to get them to fit.
So we've had a lap and a half now under the safety car. Barrichello, Michael Schumacher, Raikkonen promoted to third by that pit stop of Juan Montoya's. Ralf Schumacher up to fourth. Montoya slotted in fifth. Coulthard will restart in sixth. And we believe he's carrying a lot of fuel as Brundle prepares to leave the pits. And off he goes. Heidfeld is still running in seventh place in the Sauber. Eighth, Fisichella. Ninth, Trulli. And 10th, Mika Salo. But as Martin was saying, the people like Salo who are on a two-stopper, they're not benefiting from this too much, this safety car period.
Well, unless they pitted and used this as their first pit stop and lost very little track time. So I'm surprised we haven't seen really more cars. We've seen Montoya, Sato, Bernaldi and Della Rosa. Della Rosa was earlier in the race anyway, so only 3 cars chose to use that opportunity to refuel, and it looks like we're getting ready to go again. And Raikkonen has been caught out then. He's been caught absolutely asleep. He should have been on the back of Michael Schumacher's gearbox and wasn't. So the 2 Ferraris easily then first and second across the line.
Well, the indication that the safety car is pulling out is that its lights go off, and clearly that was quite a late indication. But the Ferraris were well and truly up to speed. Raikkonen, as Martin was saying, lost the advantage. A little bit of a lock-up there from Juan Montoya. He's now behind his teammate Ralf Schumacher. We've seen last season the Williams team asking Ralf Schumacher to let Montoya through when they were on different strategies, and both times in the summer of last year, French Grand Prix and Silverstone, Ralf Schumacher refused to do so. Now, one wonders whether we might see a little bit of that this afternoon.
Well, surely, though, Montoya's got more fuel on board than Ralf Schumacher at this point, having tanked up. But, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see now what Montoya's pace is and if he can stay in touch with Ralf. Bernaldi then still got some kind of problem. You'd have to assume it's, once again, with that right rear installation, and maybe they've lost the drive pegs on that side, something like that.
Bernaldi only had one finish so far in the 2002 season, so it's really been tough for him. Yet another retirement for the young Brazilian from Curitiba.
I think the 2 Williams drivers will be cursing Raikkonen for... and look, Ralf went straight across the chicane, and Montoya is going to get a run at him. Ralf also getting a run at Raikkonen. Did Ralf Schumacher jump the chicane? And look, Montoya got the pair of them. What is Raikkonen doing? That's amazing. So Montoya then absolutely gifted third position back.
Yes, incredible development here in Montreal, as Ralf Schumacher clearly knew he couldn't take advantage of having cut across the chicane. Raikkonen got confused by the whole thing, and Montoya, well, we said 2 weeks ago in Monaco, he's a man who knows an opportunity when he sees it, and he knows how to grab it. Look at this.
And it was Montoya that got the run, but why did Ralf Schumacher... I'd like to go a little bit further back than that. I think Ralf missed his braking point and went straight across the chicane. And yes, we're almost certain that he did. So Ralf got a run at Raikkonen. Raikkonen seemed to be slow down the straight, and Montoya just picked the pair of them off. Raikkonen seemed to hesitate, didn't he, James, going into turn 1, and almost lost 2 places. But Ralf then has... now obviously fallen back behind Raikkonen. Montoya just easily slipping past a pair of them with a big smile on his face, I'm sure.
Very interesting indeed. I wonder if Ralf Schumacher has some kind of problem with his braking, because he saw him also getting a little bit leery later on in the lap.
Here we go.
Here it is again.
Yes, it was. Ralf then went across the green painted tarmac, and he didn't know what to do at that point. I can't pass him, I'll get penalised, but I don't want Montoya past me. Ralf really between rock and a hard place there, and now he's trying to go around the outside of Raikkonen this time. Quite clearly the Williams have a lot more pace at this stage of the Grand Prix. I just saw our race leader Rubens Barrichello dart across the runoff area here in the final chicane as well on the previous lap, James, so he's pretty much on it. Michael Schumacher just 1.2 seconds behind him in second place. But it's Montoya, Raikkonen and Ralf Schumacher now that doing all the racing.
Well, I said before that it's usually an eventful race here in Montreal. I wasn't kidding. We saw off the start line the 2 Ferraris' tactical switch as Michael Schumacher let Rubens Barrichello through into second place. Juan Montoya took the lead. We've had a safety car period. Montoya dived into the pits in order to make a curious and yet to be explained pit stop. He's rejoined down in 5th place, and then this extraordinary situation where Ralf Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen got caught up with each other, and Montoya dived down the inside of them and has taken back 3rd place. This is lap 20